The concept of planting a food forest has become really popular in the last few years, and for good reason. They're beautiful, they're easy to maintain. The idea of planting overstory trees and then smaller woody shrubs, ground covers, all perennial plants that'll come back year after year, but give you food so that really you're just harvesting after the initial planting and then doing some maintenance along the way. It's a really cool concept, but in my opinion, it can be really overwhelming, especially with the number of different trees and plants and medicinal plants that you could be potentially adding. It's hard to know where to begin, especially if you have a whole property, whole big space that you could fill in. Unfortunately, it often causes decision paralysis, so then you end up not planting anything. Or maybe it just delays planting, but then you end up losing out on years of production. So today what I want to do is I want to show you a method that I've used that I think really simplifies the process. And even if you only have a backyard that's big enough for one tree, you can make a little food forest patch. But if you have more property, you can take that patch, start there, and then you can add other patches around it until you've basically filled your property and you have a whole food forest. But before we get started, another thing I want to highlight is this whole idea of companion planting and food forests is an ancient concept. This isn't something that we've just come up with recently. It's more of something we're rediscovering. Wines of the highest quality are only grown upon vines attached to trees. A single tree is often made to support as many as 10 vines, and the grower is greatly censured who attaches less than 3. Between mulberry rows, one can often plant mung beans or adzuki beans. These legumes enrich the soil and retain moisture, benefiting the mulberries. Grains and beans should be planted close to the trees to avoid wasting space and loosen the soil. So let's start setting up our food forest patch, but first I have to clear the site to get it all ready for planting. See, this is one of the reasons I don't like landscape fabric. I was just digging around over here and I found, it looks like there's some type of fabric that was down here at some point, who knows how long ago, but look how much soil is on top of this. So it's not preventing any weeds from forming, but it's also not decomposing. So, in my opinion, it's better to put down cardboard or something like that that's going to just break down in a couple seasons, rather than something that's creating a barrier for your roots and stuff for your plants, and you might not even know it's here. So now I need to get this out of here. So when I'm planning out a food forest patch, the first thing I want to think about is the tree that I'm going to put in the middle. This can be a fruit tree, a nut tree, a mulberry, an apple, whatever you want to put in here. But this is kind of going to be your main tree that you'll have in the middle. And then you can divide it up just like this into 4 sections. So then when you, let's just say that our sun kind of goes in this path like that across the landscape. We'll say it kind of rises over here and sets over here. This is the path that the sun is going to follow. So then we can look at our layout for our food forest patch and say, okay, that means that this side is going to be getting the most sun and over here is going to get more shade. So then we can come in here and we can say, okay, I'm going to put something that likes sun here in the front, like a raspberry. Something over here, like a gummy berry. Nice thing is that's a nitrogen fixer too. Then you can come back here and say, let's put something that's a little bit more shade loving, like a currant. And this is just kind of your basic patch then. And all it is one tree here in the middle, right? And then 4 woody shrubs or brambles like the raspberry. And then once this is all set, you can start filling in smaller things around this, right? Really easily. There's still plenty of room that you can fill in plants. You can even put some ground covers in here like strawberries or ground cherries, whatever you want. But the problem I found with setting up food forest patches is it feels really overwhelming because there's so many things that you could be potentially planting. But if you just focus on this, you have your main tree and then 4 shrubs around it and plant it according to what's going to be getting the most sunlight, then you can always fill in whatever you want around it. So now in the area that we've gotten all cleared out, I have laid out all the plants according to how we had our sketch drawn out. So in the middle, we have our mulberry tree. And then if we're remembering the pattern of the sun, I know that the sun kind of travels in this direction and sets somewhere over there. So we have our 2 most sun-loving plants at the front. I have a goomyberry, which is a nitrogen fixer as well, and then a Glencoe raspberry. And then in the back, I have a thimbleberry, which tends to be pretty shade tolerant. If you look at where they grow wild here. And if you're walking around on the hiking trails, they tend to be in fairly shaded areas. So I've kind of got him in the back corner where I know he's going to get the most shade. And then as well in the back, I have a black currant, which are kind of known for being really shade tolerant. They tend to do really well back there. But even then, he should still get a little bit of afternoon sun as the sun is kind of setting over in that direction. So let's start with our tree right here in the middle. And we're going to start digging this hole out and get these guys planted. So generally when you're planting a tree, you kind of want to make the hole about twice as big as the root ball of the tree. To be fair, this one's probably not going to be filling up this pot just because I picked this one up about a month ago and he was in one of these tiny pots, so I wanted to get him out of there. So I just kind of temporarily put him in one of these fabric pots that I had, but even still, I think I'm going to start kind of about here and I'll just kind of go around the tree just a few inches outside of the pot. And I'll just mark it like this to determine where I'm going to place the hole. You can see I have my digging buddies here. Anytime I plant anything in an area where the ducks are, these guys inevitably show up and they know I'm pulling up a lot of worms and stuff. Normally it would be better to be planting these guys when they're dormant, but if you check your local nurseries, usually you find some cool stuff when everything's all leafed out and looking nice. So you really have to decide, would I rather wait until the dormant season and risk it getting more root bound, or should I just get it in the ground and hope for the best? And today it's a little overcast. We have some rain projected in the forecast, so it's kind of the ideal time to do it if you're going to take the risk. Now, some of you may be thinking, you shouldn't plant in a round hole like this. I know there's some debate on if you should make the hole round or if you should make it square. And the argument for making it square is so that the roots don't inadvertently become root bound in this circular hole. But that's too precise to me. I'd take a middle ground where I kind of just make it an even circle just to get myself started, just because it's easier to figure out how big you're making the hole. And then I'll come in here and just kind of chop into the sides, kind of make it less perfect. And it achieves the same thing, but I'm not stressing about, is the hole circular or is it a square? It's one of those things that seems like minutia that's really not that big of a deal, and we're probably overthinking it. So as long as there's places where the roots can kind of get trapped in corners and the sides, I'm not too worried. All right, now that we have our hole dug, I can say it's probably about the right depth. You don't want to plant it too low. You want, if anything, the crown of the roots to be a little bit above surface level, especially because I'm going to be adding wood chips and different things like that to this as well. So that soil level is going to build up. So you definitely don't want to plant it too low. So first thing I do in this case is I just get all the wood chips out of here. Just set those to the side. We'll use those later. Like I said, I bought this guy about a month ago, so I imagine his roots haven't expanded a whole lot at this point, but let's flip him over. It can be a little challenging to get these guys out of these fabric pots, but I do like them because it helps the tree not get root bound. Yeah, you can see he didn't expand a whole lot, but like I said, he was in one of those tiny little pots you can still see. So I wanted to get him out of there. So if anything, soil level probably needs to come up a little bit. So we're gonna pull some of this soil into here. It's okay if a little bit of this potting soil ends up in here. I don't add too much though, just because you do want his roots to be spreading out and finding nutrients around it. It's better to add fertilizers and manure and stuff on the top. Something like that looks pretty good. Okay, and then we just want to spread out these roots a bit so that they start seeking nutrients elsewhere. Then we can just start packing in some of the soil around this guy. It's always nice digging around in the soil and you find pottery shards. You never know what you're going to find, especially at this place. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but we're getting there. So this particular variety of mulberry is called Early Bird, and this is a new one for me. I've never had this one before, but like I said, my local nursery had it, so I decided to pick it up. And not surprisingly, based on the name, it's one of the earliest fruiting varieties, but it's also fairly cold tolerant. I think I was reading that it went down to, you know, it always ranges, but goes down to either zones 4 or 5, somewhere in there. So that's our first tree planted. So now once we have kind of our main tree in here, I measured these out. I failed to mention this earlier, but I kind of stepped these off. They're all about 3 feet away from the trunk of the tree. And that's just so you don't want everything growing right against the trunk. You want to give it a little bit of space, especially since it will expand, and you want to be able to pick the fruit and stuff on the tree easily. So let's move on to our next one. I'm gonna start planting this little raspberry up. This guy, if you see your roots, this guy actually started from a cutting earlier this season, so I wasn't sure what his root system would look like, but pretty happy with that. But In my experience, black currants tend to grow pretty vigorously. I've had best success with them over like the red currants or the white ones. The black ones seem to almost always root. So I noticed that thimbleberry that I had in the pot was looking pretty droopy. It's because I just dug these guys up. He was a little runner. Just for an example to see them all laid out, but I'm gonna grab this little bit bigger one and put him in the ground instead. I've noticed, this needs to be a little bit bigger. I've noticed that when I transplant these thimbleberries, they'll kind of get shocked and drooped over shortly after you plant them, but in my experience they tend to recover just fine. But this one will be a little bit bigger. So gummy berries tend to be a little bit difficult to start from cuttings. And even though I probably put like 30 of them in there, I think I only had like 5 of them root, but that's 5 of them I didn't have before. So I'm not gonna complain too much. Now that these guys are all in the ground, I've got my cleanup crew hard at work here. I think I'm gonna head over to the rabbits and get some manure. And I'm just gonna top dress this whole area. The nice thing about rabbit manure is it's considered a cold manure, which means that you can just apply it directly to the garden and you don't have to worry about it burning your plants. So let's go do that now. With the rabbit manure, I just like to scatter a thin layer over the entire area just to start adding some more biological material and some fertilizer that will be taken up by the plants. I'm fertilizing the whole area rather than just around the trees, just because I expect the roots are eventually going to start reaching out, and I want to improve the soil health of this entire area in case I decide to add some other plants in the future, like some strawberries or ground cherries or things like that. You can see the ducks are all over this because there's plenty of worms in here for them to eat. And now with that thin layer down, I'm going to go over to the wood chip pile, and I'm going to put on probably a good 6 inches of wood chips over the top of the manure that I just added. And these are just wood chips that I get from a local tree trimmer. They'll just drop them off at my place, and you'll get a mixture of different types of woods and branches in there. I think this last one that I picked up has a good mixture of oak and madrone, which is a local hardwood in the Pacific Northwest. So you never know what you could get, but in general, I don't worry too much about getting pine and it acidifying the soil. I haven't found that to be true because it just decomposes on the top. You're not mixing it in, obviously. So it just will break down on the top and add organic matter. And right here, I'm just pulling the wood chips away from the base of the tree because you don't want to have too much buildup of wood chips right against the trunk in case it causes rot. So just pull it back a little bit like you're making a donut around the tree. It doesn't look like much now, but as this little food forest patch begins to grow and develop, I hope to share some updates with you. And if I end up coming back in here and planting some other things, I'll share those updates with you as well. This is just a little case study I thought we could do together, so you can see how it starts in the beginning and grows and develops through the years into something really productive for your family. Hopefully I inspired you today to just get out and plant your first food forest patch. Let me know in the comments what you end up planting.